A year ago this week, one of the top hits in the USA was My Father's Eyes by one of the busiest session players in rock and roll history. He's played on dozens of sessions by everyone from Howlin' Wolf to the Beatles to Ray Charles. I'll have details and that top hit after this.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. We're counting down the 40 biggest hits in the 50 states. Now we're up to a song that Eric Clapton says was the most painful one he's ever written. Clapton is one of the most famous and most respected rock guitarists in history. Over the years, he's been a founding member of legendary bands like the Yardbirds, Cream, Blind Faith, and Derek and the Dominoes. But Eric's life hasn't always been a happy one. He was abandoned by his parents when he was just 5 years old. He went through a tumultuous marriage to Patty Boyd Harrison, former wife of George Harrison, a relationship that inspired the song Layla. And over the years, he's fought an on-and-off battle against heroin addiction. Then, just a year ago, Clapton went through one of the most terrible experiences anyone can endure, the accidental death of his young son. The boy's name was Conor Clapton, and he was just 4 years old. Eric had had the child with a woman named Lori Del Santo, and though the parents were no longer close, Eric was deeply attached to his son and visited him in New York every time he could. On March 20th, 1991, little Conor was playing in a luxury apartment on the 53rd floor of a high-rise in Manhattan. Apparently, not watching where he was going, the child ran through an open window and fell hundreds of feet to his death. The loss of his son, Conor, absolutely devastated Eric Clapton. For months, he withdrew from the world. And then, to deal with his insurmountable grief, Eric began to do one of the things he does best, write music. He poured his soul out, and the result was a tender song to his son that helped Clapton deal with the tragedy he'd endured.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. These are the nation's biggest hits by the world's hottest stars. And here's one of them, moving up 3 notches this week to number 14, Eric Clapton, a man who's been one of the world's hottest stars in each of 4 decades. In the 60s, Eric was a member of such pioneering rock groups as the Yardbirds, Cream, and Blind Faith. In the 70s, he led Derek and the Dominoes and started a solo career that kept him on top through the 80s. Now, in the 90s, Eric Clapton's star still burns bright. Here he is with Layla.
Casey's Top 40.
For Casey Kasem, I'm David Perry. Now we're up to the latest hit for Eric Clapton, a British superstar who recently risked his life to save his guitars. It happened a little over a month ago at the end of May. Eric Clapton went out to dinner in London with some friends, and as he returned to his townhouse in an exclusive section of the city, Eric noticed smoke pouring into the air. As he got closer, he realized to his horror that it was his townhouse that was on fire. Quickly, Eric rushed in to see what he could save, and he didn't go for his awards, his art collection, or his collection of photographs. Eric went directly to the room where he kept his precious, irreplaceable guitars. 36 guitars that he's played throughout his career. With help from firemen and policemen and some of his neighbors, Eric was able to get every single guitar out of his townhouse. The fire was quickly brought under control, and most of the damage was confined to several rooms on the top floor. Eric later told reporters he could live without most of his possessions, but he didn't know how he could live without his beloved guitars. This week, Eric Clapton is playing guitar on his 11th Top 40 hit. I'm David Perry. These are the week's biggest hits from 40 to number 1, and we're counting them down. Climbing 4 notches to number 23, here's a rocker who was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992 as a member of the Yardbirds, Eric Clapton with My Father's Eyes.
America's Top Hits.
A year ago this week, one of the top hits in the USA was by one of the busiest session players in rock history. He's played on dozens of sessions by everyone from Howlin' Wolf to the Beatles to Ray Charles. This legendary guitar man began recording back in 1964 as a member of the Yardbirds. And in the years since, he's been a member of John Mayall's Blues Breakers, Cream, Blind Faith, Delaney and Bonnie, and Derek and the Dominoes. He's had a super successful career as a solo act as well. But In between all those acts, he's also done a lot of playing in the background. The list of artists this guitar legend has worked with is encyclopedic. It's a virtual history of rock music. Along with blues greats Howlin' Wolf and Ray Charles, and an appearance on the Beatles song While My Guitar Gently Weeps, this Englishman has played on recordings by Duane Allman, The Band, Chuck Berry, Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Joe Cocker, Phil Collins, Dr. John, Aretha Franklin, Elton John, Cyndi Lauper, The Rolling Stones, Sting, Tina Turner, and Lionel Richie, among many, many, many others.
Casey's Coast to Coast.